Hello and welcome to Tank and AFV News. My name's Tom. Today I am doing an author profile. This episode will look at Peter Gudgin, which is spelled Gudgin, so hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he wrote several books, mostly in the 80s and 90s. He's a World War II vet, so there's not a lot of biographical information out there on the internet. I'm not sure if he's alive or not. Obviously, most of that generation is passed on now. So, but he wrote several books, some interesting ones. Probably the most well-known ones are his book on the Tiger tanks, which you can see right here. So it came out in the early 90s, I believe, and they're Arms and Armor Press. Also with Arms and Armor, he did a couple of these old Tank Illustrated series books. This one on German tanks, 45 to present. He did another one that was on like German armor in North Africa. I don't have a copy of that one. And then as far as larger books, he also had one called Armored Firepower, which I just got this one in the mail about a week ago, so I haven't even really had a chance to digest it completely. This one on Sutton is the publisher, and it's probably, I think, one of the largest of the books that he wrote. He also had a book that I don't own a copy of, which is called With Churchills to War, just looking over my computer at the listing. It's the history of the 48th Battalion Royal Tank Regiment at War, 1939 to 1945. Now, he, of course, served in Churchill tanks during the war up until 1943. And we'll get to that in a second. He also wrote a couple other books I saw, like one on British intelligence during the war, and a few things. But that kind of covers the major tank books on tanks. Now, his story his wartime story is really one of the most interesting things of his story. And so I'm going to read a little blurb here from the Tiger Tank book, sort of on the inside sleeve. And it says, "The story cannot be told by a person better qualified than Peter Gudgin. Commanding a Churchill tank in North Africa in 1943, his tank was knocked out by a Tiger, which was subsequently captured intact, becoming the first example to be inspected by experts, one of whom was Peter Gudgin in Britain. He was then appointed Technical Intelligence Officer, evaluating all foreign developments, including the Tiger variants, before finally assuming responsibility for writing the British War Office official history of German AFV development prior to and during the Second World War." So, while he was commanding at Churchill's in 1943 in Tunisia, his tank was knocked out by a Tiger. He was injured. He was sent back to the UK to recover. And then the tank that knocked out his tank, the Tiger, assumed to be Tiger 131, which was the one that we all know, or most of us, that is at Bovington Tank Museum to this day. It is the only running Tiger tank in the world. And he became very, very familiar with that vehicle after the war. And in fact, in the book here, there's quite a few pictures and notes based specifically on that tank, because of course that was the first one the British had in relatively working order to examine. So his history is tied very, very closely to Tiger 131, and that makes a really good story. Now, in some ways, it's almost too good a story, and I don't want to say unfortunately, but the truth is that, according to the Tank Museum website, recent research has shown that Tiger 131 was actually captured not exactly where they traditionally thought it was. Not in exactly the same place, which means it probably was not the Tiger tank that knocked out Peter Gudgin's tank, but it was part of the same action overall in that particular battle. So, and I think this was a fairly recent discovery, so I don't know if Gudgin was still alive, but all of his work, he assumed that or thought that Tiger 131 was the actual tank that injured him, and which he later would go on to study. So still a pretty cool story. I mean, you're writing a book on Tiger tanks, what are your qualifications? Well, I fought against them, and then after the war, I was part of British, research and development, helping to study these things, and to do reports on German armor for the British government. So that's pretty cool story, I think. As for the books themselves, start with the Tiger book. It's not huge, it's a decent sized book. It's a nice, handy little reference. It covers kind of not just the Tiger one, but the different Tiger variants. It is, as you can see, fairly quietly, heavily illustrated with pictures and diagrams. It's a handy little reference. It's not as new as some of the things that are out there. It's certainly not as detailed as something like, the Jensen Doyle histories, although it's probably a little more readable. And the other good thing about this book is you can get used copies on Amazon for like $3-4 plus shipping. So like $8-9 you can get one of these. And it's a handsome book. It was one of those books I ordered just because it was cheap, just to add to the collection, and I got it and realized it's actually a handy reference. So to be honest, when I just want to grab some Tiger info, I either usually grab this or my Haynes Manual Tiger book, which is more recent, certainly. And then if I really need to get in the nitty gritty, I might dive into something a little more substantial, like Spielberg or Jensen Doyle and that stuff. As far as Armored Firepower, this one also, I paid like $4 for this plus shipping. So again, this book was about the price of a, Burger King combo meal. You can't really complain about that. And it's not something I'll probably use a lot. It's basically an overview of World War II tank development with an emphasis on guns and firepower. That's a story I know pretty well, but it's a handsome book. Like I say, also heavily illustrated, lots of pictures. A well put together book. This is a 20-some-year-old book. Pages are still holding together, so that's good. So not bad. Like I said, probably not one I'm going to use a ton. But if you're looking for an overview of World War II tank development, particularly an expensive one, like I said, under $10 online. Otherwise, like I said, the Old Tank Illustrated series, I used to have more of these when I was a kid, and foolishly, by the time I was in college, I sort of got rid of all my books, and I had to sort of go back and repurchase this. So this one I found for $3.50, I think at a hobby shop. I got lucky. Some of these Old Tank Illustrateds are pretty cheap. Some go for quite a bit more. So there's one on German North African armor, which is a later one in the series. I think it's up in the 20s as far as the number. Quite a bit more. It's like $20-some, and frankly, I'm just not going to pay that much for what is essentially a photo collection book. But I've always enjoyed these Old Tank Illustrated series books. They're there's been a lot of different types of photo series from different publishers over the years like these, but I just remember these from when I was younger, picking them up at the discount bookstore as a kid. So partially I just like these for the nostalgia. So that is the story of Peter Gudgin. Like I say, certainly if there's an author who has written, a published author on tanks, who's done serious writing on the topic, who can also claim very interesting wartime experience. Not many people can say not only have they written a book on a tiger, they also faced a tiger in combat. So definitely an interesting story. As we said, you can go to the Tank Museum website. They have a whole article about how they discovered that Tiger 131 was most likely not the Tiger tank that he engaged, but was likely somewhere else in that particular battle. So, and I can put a link to that article in the description. So hopefully you found this interesting. Like I said, not bad books, and under $10 online, can't really go wrong. All right, well, that is our review, or profile, I should say, of Peter Gudgin. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you on the next one. Thank you.